Viewers' focus is back on the big story as we are tracking the latest in this edition. This is the moment where the US President Donald Trump and Russia's President Putin simultaneously disembarked their planes in Alaska to meet for talks about the Ukraine war. Air Force One arrived at the base first, with Putin's presidential plane arriving about half an hour later. Both the leaders have emerged at the same time, walking down a red carpet and greeting each other warmly. Donald Trump applauded while the Russian president walked to meet him, shaking hands and giving friendly arm taps, while the two exchanged pleasantries before posing for the camera. The two leaders walked along a red carpet rolled out at a joint base with F-22 fighter jets on either side, as the four F-35s and a B-2 Spirit bomber soared overhead. In a remarkable move, Putin stepped into Donald Trump's armored presidential limousine, known as the Beast, the road with Trump to the site of the summit at the base. The Russian President Vladimir Putin and the US President Donald Trump delivered the statements after their Alaska summit. The summit that went on for about 3 hours, then they left without taking any more questions. The scheduled working lunch was cancelled and Donald Trump headed back to Washington. While Putin called the meeting constructive and useful, thanking Donald Trump for a candid exchange, and also added that he has established very good direct contacts with the US President. Donald Trump described the discussion as very productive, claiming the significant progress with many points agreed and very few outstanding, while stopping short of calling it a deal. He said that he will brief NATO leaders, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and other officials on the substance of the talks. Donald Trump also addressed that it's a 10-on-10 meeting. He framed Anchorage as a logical venue because Russia and the US are neighbors, noting that he greeted Donald Trump as a dear neighbor and thanked Americans for preserving the memory of Soviet soldiers buried in Alaska. Putin then said that Ukraine was a central topic. He agreed that the security of the Ukraine must be ensured, but stressed that all the primary roots of the conflict and the Russia's legitimate concerns must be addressed to create a lasting settlement. Now, neither leader offered specifics on what was agreed, announced a ceasefire, or outlined the timelines or the enforcement mechanisms. No such specific details have been put in the public record, as the early wrap and lack of a question and answer left open key questions on the territory, security guarantees and sequencing. Now we see what remains to be the next part of this meeting. Now viewers, as we decode as what potentially could be expected, Russian President Putin has invited the US President Donald Trump to visit in Moscow. Donald Trump has called the idea interesting without commitment. Let's listen into that.
Again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, Ambassador KP Fabian, who's a former diplomat, joins me live on the broadcast. Appreciate you, sir, joining me live. Always a pleasure to speaking to you. And now we see that the meeting, which was very much anticipated on what happens to be the future course of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, but what we are looking at is a very unfinished kind of a setup, as there was an inconclusive end to it as well, while the question and answers not being taken up. But both the leaders stressed on the productive and the progressive part of it. So what is this signaling to? What essentially remains to be the next course as we speak about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, as 10 on 10 meeting said by Donald Trump, but at the same time, now the ball is in the court of Ukrainian President Zelensky. What do you expect?
Thank you. Let me put it this way. There has been limited progress, and as a matter of fact, we do not know what exactly was discussed, in the sense that both parties do not want to tell us. Now, Zelensky and his European supporters were hoping that President Trump would give a stiff warning to President Putin. You agree to a ceasefire, otherwise sanctions will follow. Now, I personally hold that they were unrealistic, because Trump had no such plans, despite some of the public statements he made, but that is his style. Second thing is that Trump also took the trouble to make it very clear that he was not agreeing with Putin on any territorial arrangements, because it is for Zelensky to do that. So now that Putin has invited Trump for a meeting in Moscow, as a matter of fact, Putin came to United States. So now it is the turn of President Trump to go to Russia. If that meeting takes place, then Zelensky also will be there. Then Putin's ideas about the outlines of an agreement will be given to Zelensky, and either he will say yes or he will say no, or there will be further consultations. So limited progress has been made.
Well, absolutely. And while we are also looking at, sir, as what happens to be in the next course, it is important to understand from the optics of how this meeting went actually. From your point of view, as the expectations were high, the high stakes meeting taking place in Alaska. Now, Russian President Putin making a very rare switch to English and asking Donald Trump to meet in Moscow the next time. What do you make of this? What exactly was the reason essentially of such a rare switch, and how does this also shape what happens to be the next and the meeting that will also be a final kind of a engagement, as we can expect a big breakthrough?
I do not know whether we can expect it to be the final meeting, but I think if any progress is to be made, this Moscow meeting has to take place. Now, of course, there is the alternative of a meeting in a neutral place, if the Europeans insist. But then there is another complication. As we all know, the International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant against President Putin. So very technically, you know that he did not go to South Africa. So there can be problems. So I take it very likely that there will be a meeting in Moscow where Zelensky also will be there, and then there can be further progress. But otherwise, the war will continue, and in a month or two, Russia will capture more territories. There are deserters in the Ukrainian army, so it is in the interest of Ukraine to agree to a ceasefire by meeting at least a part of the conditions set